Hi, Fashion Illustration. This week we are going to take a hand-drawn fashion illustration and bring it into Photoshop and add a repeating pattern to it, and manipulate it and clean it up in Photoshop. This is a great option for us as we don't have access to our Wacom tablets anymore. Um, and we don't have access to the studios. This is going to be a great option for us. So I'm going to start by taking pictures of my illustrations. It would be better if I could scan them in, but if you're taking pictures, all you have to do is make sure that the lighting is even across the illustration and make sure that there are no shadows on top of your illustration, and make sure that the perspective is correct across the illustration. You don't want to tilt your camera at an angle. You want your camera to be perfectly horizontal above the flat piece of paper. So after that, we will bring it into Photoshop. So I'm in Photoshop and I have opened up my picture, but she is sideways. So we are going to go to Image, image rotation 90 degrees clockwise, and image rotation allows you to rotate the whole canvas, not just like an object in the canvas. So let's crop out any of this extra stuff that we don't need. So we're going to go to the crop tool and drag inwards. And we could have kept the original ratio, which that might be nice. Yeah, so we'll keep the original ratio and we'll hit enter, or we'll just switch to another tool and it should automatically remove any extra pixels back there. If you have this checked, it will delete the pixels, the extra pixels outside the image. Otherwise, it might try to hold on to these pixels even though they're off the artboard. It would like hold on to the wood floor that was in the picture. So she's looking pretty good now. So she is too large right now. I've checked and my rulers are showing inches, so I am going to go to Image and then Image Size. Canvas size does something slightly different, but image size, and we are going to lower the width. Let's try, yeah, 11 by 14. I believe that's the size of the original artwork. And we are going to raise the resolution. And we should have that many pixels in this for sure, so it won't be lowering the resolution at all or anything like that. So we're going to hit OK. So we really wanted her to be at 300 pixels per inch because that's like the highest quality printing level, and that's the level that we should be working at. So now when I go to image size, resolution should be in 300. So let's adjust the color on her a little bit. The background, even though I did my best to keep it evenly lit, is like a little muddy. So I am going to set the background to be pure white by using some adjustment tools. So if you are in the layer panel, you can come down to this little button in the layer panel, or you can click on the adjustment panel to get all of the same options there. And there are a lot of different adjustment layers available, but we are going to use levels for now. And what we can do with levels that I find so handy is we can set the white. So if we want this to be the purest white, or the brightest color on the page, I can select this little button and then click on the white, and she's automatically adjusted. I think that that looks pretty darn good, actually. We lose the texture of the background, but I think that that's fine for our purposes. Cool. So this properties panel that popped up, I can always access it again. Let's also set the black point. Yeah, and this is the medium. Yeah, that's no good. Alright, I like it with just the white point set for now. So that is levels. There's lots of other ways to use levels, but we can also use any other adjustment panel that we want to, and every time you make an adjustment panel, it adds a new layer. And if we double click on this little thumbnail, this is its clipping mask thumbnail, which is kind of a whole different thing, but if we double click on this thumbnail, we can access this panel again. So let's make a brightness slash contrast layer. It's probably easiest to do it down here. And if we wanted to add more contrast to this image, we could bump that up in here. And also if we needed to adjust the brightness one way or the other. Amazing. So I can close this, and we could always access it again by double clicking on this layer. These brightness and contrast layers only apply to layers that are below them. So if I make another layer up here and I start drawing on it, then this layer is not affected by the brightness and contrast in the levels layer. But if I adjust the level, if I adjust the layer and I bring it down here, you can see that it was adjusted by those. So she's looking pretty good, but this corner is still a little dark, and like the bottom of the page is a little dark. So to clean those moments up, I normally use the dodge tool, and the dodge tool lightens, the burn tool darkens. Sometimes I'll use the burn tool, like if I wanted to add shadows to her arms, I could do it with the burn tool, but we are going to use the dodge tool, and we are going to make it really big. Yeah. And we'll zoom out a tiny bit, and then we want it only to affect the highlights, which is just going to be pretty much just the white. It might affect some of the lighter greens if we touched her, but hopefully we're going to try to just touch the background. The highlights, and I like to keep my exposure really low. The exposure is how much it lightens on each pass every time you touch it, and the lower it is, the more control you have. So I'm just going to drag back and forth on some of these corners and brighten up the page. And you can kind of go too bright and it can get kind of splotchy. So sometimes it's nice to avoid splotchiness, to make your brush even bigger and to do like the minimum amount of passes, where like I'm just gonna do a big loop on that. So now the whole page is nice and bright, and we can start manipulating her and adding any kind of detail to her. So if there was anything that we didn't like, that we wanted to remove, like this smudge, I can remove that smudge using the healing spot tool. I found that this relatively new tool is the easiest way to adjust things like this. So if we grab that tool and we can adjust the size, and we can click on the area we don't like, it should just remove that splotch. So like here where you can still see like some of my pencil marks, I can draw there. And what it's doing is it's just taking the pixels that surround the area you clicked on and trying its best to heal those moments. Maybe some of these. So my main goal today was to get a repeating pattern on her dress for practice for you guys. Next week, fashion illustration, you will be drawing the drawing an illustration of your like fifth garment, and you'll be able to choose either one of these ways. Either you'll be drawing with Illustrator or you'll be drawing in here, and we can add patterns here pretty easily, but one of the first steps is actually to select around her different sections of clothing. So I don't want the pattern to be seamless across like the lapel and the jacket, because patterns they wouldn't line up perfectly across the lapel and the jacket. So I'm going to use my polygonal lasso tool, which is one of the selection tools, and I am going to select around the lapel and then around her body, and we are going to save those selections. So you go to select, save selection, and we can call this left lapel. And then I'm going to go ahead and deselect. I don't need to go crazy doing this. This particular illustration would be very forgiving if I am not precise with the pattern, but I think that this is going to be great. are going to use the pattern we made together a few weeks ago to put onto her dress, and the way we've learned how to make a new fill layer is layer, new fill layer, pattern, and this is the really quick pattern that we all made together last week. And we are going to scale it down significantly. Is this really the best one? Oh yeah, okay. So that scale is looking pretty good. I think we can hit OK. And right now this is a pattern fill layer, so we could still double click on this little thumbnail and adjust, but we are going to right click and choose rasterize layer, and now this layer is just pixels. It's not a fill layer anymore. So now we need a section of this that's like a pretty big rectangle, but that isn't the whole page. So I really like to kind of copy and paste different sections of the rectangles or different rectangles of the pattern for the little different sections. So we are going to hit copy and paste, and this is going to be our right lapel. And we're going to shut off this layer. So here's the right lapel. If we want to, we could preemptively give it like a little twist. And then we have already chosen and saved the right lapel selection. So we can go to select, load selection, and choose right lapel. And there it is. And then we are going to make sure that you're on the right layer. So choose this layer, and then we're going to choose clipping mask. And then we have the pattern there. So let's do that for all of them, and then we will experiment with making it semi-transparent. So even though the jacket down here, I'll zoom in on it, even though this rectangle did not quite go to the end of my selection, I can adjust that now by unlinking the clipping mask from the rectangle, right? So the benefit of using clipping masks to do these patterns is we can unlink them, and then we can move this around separately. You just have to make sure that you are on the clipping mask thumbnail is selected. If this thumbnail is selected, then you will move the clipping mask around. So you need to have the graphic thumbnail selected, I guess is what I mean to say. So that's looking good. I'm just trying to make sure it's covering the whole area. And Now, before I like manipulate the flow of this garment, or the flow of the pattern on this garment at least, I am going to select all these layers and let's experiment with changing the opacity. So that's already, I do like how multiply is looking. I tried to choose a fashion illustration that wouldn't look horrible with the blue that we've been using in this pattern. Linear light is looking pretty good. So that's playing really nicely with the green, but the yellow isn't getting any darker. So all of these opacity settings play with color in different ways. Soft light is nice, a nice soft color on there. Alright, I'm going to try multiply and just raising the opacity, or lowering the opacity proper, and seeing how I think that looks pretty great. So if we wanted to, we could select the jacket. Again, we're going to make sure that this is unlinked and only select the graphic thumbnail. And then we could, if we wanted to, go to Edit, Transform, Warp, and we could start, warping and manipulating the pattern so it looked more like it was being influenced. And what's great about the new warp that they've added is that you can hold Alt and you can add your own anchor points. So I know I want like kind of her knee to be affecting the garment right here. And we can go ahead and add that in, add that kind of moment in. We can add as many anchor points as we want this way, which I think is really cool. You weren't able to do this even so recently as last year without using a different, more complicated tool. So them adding it into Warp is really nice. So I like to tighten things up around edges to kind of make it seem like things are warping around the body, on the edge of the body. It can be nice to make things follow ruffles and curves and things like that. Okay, I think that is looking great. So I put these on top of the brightness slash contrast layer and levels layer. Let's see what they look like if we put them below that. Not much different. I liked it better on top though. So we're gonna leave that there. And I think this would be great for tonight's homework. But there's certainly a lot of other things we could change. We could manipulate colors in here, all kinds of things. If you got colors wrong or you want to change colors, that's pretty straightforward to do. So honestly, we could do it just like we have done it with the jackets, where we are going to make a new layer. I am going to choose, like if I want to change the color of her sleeves, I'm going to choose the brush tool and choose a new color to change her sleeves to. And we are going to change this layer to color, and color, that particular opacity setting only affects objects with saturation, and so this is, even though I'm being really messy, it's not really showing up on the background, especially in the pure white areas. It is kind of showing up a little bit in some of these areas. So let me show you what this would look like on normal and now what it looks like on color. We can use the eraser tool to clean up anywhere that we didn't really want to get the color. But because this is an illustration, like we don't have to be crazy precise about everything. We can kind of, there's kind of some breathing room. Okay, so that's one of my favorite ways to change color. There are lots of other things that we could adjust. So if you guys have any specific questions this week, let me know. Reach out to me. How do I change this? How do I do this? And I can answer those questions. Or you can come to my office hours on Wednesday. See you guys later.